So when the government announced on the 17th of May that there'd be $4 million extra funding for the 1800 Respect phone line, was that new money or does that come out of the existing $100 million that had been allocated under the National Action Plan?
Kate McKenzie, Principal Advisor, Family Safety Task Force. That was in addition to the money normally provided.
Okay,
for the
thank
plan.
you. And we know that it was some 18,000 odd calls went unanswered to the 1800 Respect line in 2014. Was there a calculation done in setting that $4 million additional funding injection that related to how many phone calls could then be answered?
Senator, it's not quite as simple as that, as a simple calculation. One of the things that we've noticed right from the beginning with 1800 Respect is a lot of women, or assume they're women, a lot of women ring and then don't go through with the call. So the number of calls that commence where somebody makes the call but then it hangs up has been very large right from the very beginning, right? Because women are in that, it takes a lot of guts for women to ring up.
Indeed.
They can quite often be about to make a phone call and they can be interrupted by either their children or perhaps their violent partner.
Understand.
So there are a lot of reasons why the calls may not carry through.
Sure, I'm interested
and
in
so
that.
we've been keeping an eye on that. What we've also been keeping an eye on is the number of calls that are taken by 1800 Respect, and they have been going up. So right the way through we've been watching this.
Sure.
In 2013 we provided an additional $800,000 to 1800 Respect to answer some more calls. Then they had
So,
two...
Ms McKenzie, I'm sorry to interrupt, but my time's really tight. My question was about unanswered calls, not about incomplete calls or the increase of demand, but unanswered calls. With the extra funding, have you projected whether 1800 Respect will now be able to answer all calls made or not?
Well, we project that it will be able to answer a certain number of calls, but we cannot guarantee that the number of unanswered calls, if women hang up, are going to be answered. So there is always going to be a number of calls where it won't be responded to.
So the number of calls that you've projected with the additional funds that you will now be able to answer, how many is that?
55,000.
Okay, and how much of the 18,000 unanswered calls does that reduce?
That's, as I said, the issue isn't whether... We don't know how many of that 18,000 are women who've called and then decided to hang up themselves, or women who've called and have not been able to get a response within a period of time.
So do you not distinguish between calls that are not picked up and calls that are incomplete?
We have when a woman rings 1800 Respect, the first thing that she gets is a privacy call that says, that this call could be monitored. Then there's an opportunity for her to be able to leave a message after two minutes for somebody to ring her back, and many women take that opportunity. And
do you categorise that as an unanswered call?
If the woman breaks at that time, if the woman breaks off at that time, yes.
And so that's where the 18,000, that includes...
Yes.
Calls that aren't able to be returned.
Yes.
Okay, well, given the unfortunate running out of time, could you please take on notice for me to give me as much information about the estimates of calls that with the additional funding you will now be able to attend to, as opposed to the ones that you have not been able to attend to without that extra funds? And can you answer me whether you've built in an expected increase in demand given the increasing levels of awareness about domestic and family violence in the community? So perhaps if you could take that on notice for me. And also I'd like a full breakdown of all of the spending allocated so far for that 100 million over the 4 years.
Yep.
And thank you. I've now got some questions that I'm not sure will belong with you about respectful relationships funding in schools. There was a discretionary DSS grants program that unfortunately was discontinued in the budget. And I'm interested in if that was the only one or whether there's other respectful relationships programs that have also been defunded.
In terms of respectful relationships, we've raised this, this has been raised and discussed a number of times at estimates. The respectful relationships projects that we funded out of the 100 million were projects that were funded as one-off projects for up to 3 years, and they were the ones that were the part of the evaluation of the respectful relationships program.
So I think that's different to the discretionary grants program that DSS have cut. So it's the real skills program. So perhaps Ms Bennett, that might be a question more for you. Thank you, though, Ms Mackenzie. I'm sure there's others with more questions for you, so don't go too far.
We have others that are coming to the table to answer this question.
Thank you. So, yes, I'm aware that there was that one respectful relationship program that was lost its funding. Are there others as well?
Tracy Creech, Acting Branch Manager, Families and Children. I understand the service that you're speaking about was formerly funded under the Communities for Children Direct program, so would have applied, I suspect, under the new Children and Parenting Support program. So it's a broad-banded activity that would have a full range of different sorts of children and parenting services under there. So we would need to have a look at what other sorts of services applied to deliver similar kind of activities.
Okay, do I understand that to mean you can't answer me now what other programs have been defunded? Is that what you're saying?
So this is an activity that brought together a number of former programs. So there would have been Communities for Children Direct, My Time for Carers, My Time for Grandparents, Specialised Family Violence, Kids in Focus, and they all had a broad range of focus of their activities.
And you're not sure which of those have remained funded and which have not remained funded?
We can give you some...
Yeah, so my question is just, and thank you for the broader context, but I'm interested in respectful relationships programs that were funded under your department. Which of those have now lost their funding?
I think, so what I'm getting at is there would have been the respectful relationships may not have been a program in its own right. It may have been a particular service delivering a particular program, their respectful relationships program. So we would need to go back and have a look at whether there were other providers who were delivering a similar program prior to this broadbanding activity.
Okay, well, if you can, all I'm trying to get at is, what's lost funding? If something's replaced it, great. I'd love to hear about that too.
Sure.
Thank you. And just one final question. I'm interested in the engagement that your department has, if any, with the Department of Education and the National Curriculum Authority about embedding respectful relationships in schools.
We're working across government on an array of where different portfolios make a contribution to this, but you would have to put that question to the Department of Education about where it's sitting at the moment and current discussions about curriculum and
so I'm
those
asking
issues.
you about your engagement with that
Well,
department.
we said we do talk to them.
You talk to them. Okay. Is there any sort of formalised process or is it ad hoc?
I think it comes up when issues are raised.
So it's ad hoc.
Ad hoc.
In response to a request from them?
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks very much. That's all I've got time for, unfortunately. Thank you, Acting Chair.